gentlemen, this is Luebke from GENEDGE. Thanks for joining us at this for this webinar about tips that you can do in the near term right now to increase your cybersecurity posture. I'm going to be co-presenting today with a partner company called Red Lion Cybersecurity and one of the founders, Josh Marpet. So I'm going to do a brief intro here for just a few minutes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Josh and let him give you a little bit of insight into his company and his approach. But basically what we're doing is GENEDGE is working with clients to set up their risk management structure on how to look at cybersecurity from a risk management point of view, and what kinds of assets are the highest priority assets to work on protecting. And then we're working with technology companies for doing vulnerability assessments and technical assessments on your computers and your networks as well. So I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. So just real briefly, what is a GENEDGE? Who are we? If you aren't familiar with us at all, I'm just going to really briefly go into this. We are part of state government for the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're an economic development agent that is a nonprofit consulting organization. We work with smaller firms around the Commonwealth on a number of different issues. We are also affiliated with the U.S. Department of Commerce. So through those three connections, we're able to help smaller businesses with a variety of different services because we're subsidized by the government agencies. The service rates that we're able to provide to folks is lower than what they might be able to find in the market because we're trying to help small businesses grow their business, find new opportunities for growth, and we're actually trying to figure out how to leverage the cybersecurity issue into part of your growth strategy as well. So we work on a number of different services from the front end of helping companies decide what their strategic direction can be, and developing some insights into new market opportunities, channels of distribution and that thing, going into, on the back end of the business, going into quality management systems, Lean Six Sigma, supply chain automation, and things like that. So I'm going to jump right into the cybersecurity element right now. Just real briefly on some housekeeping things. If you want to make any comments, over on the left-hand side of the screen, there's an icon that looks like a computer screen. And if you click on that, it's going to open up the meeting stream, and you can type your comments into that box at any point in time. If you raise your hand, then we can unmute you and actually take your question live. Everyone is muted online, and the phone conference, anybody that joined on the phone is muted as well. So just real briefly, I just thought I'd start with a couple of things I was thinking about this morning. This whole business about cybersecurity, it feels like it's been off, kind of taken off the last couple of years. But the term cybersecurity has only really been around since the late 80s, which I found interesting. That was even before the internet. So cybersecurity started becoming an issue quite a while ago. I also just came across this little tidbit this morning that the Navy receives over 100,000 cyber attacks every hour at this point, and that's just one DoD agency. And then thinking about the iPhone and kind of all of the implications for security that it has, and things how it's changed the business. That first year it came out 10 years ago, they sold 6 million units, and now there are 700 million iPhones in the world, And that doesn't count all the Androids and every other kind of machine that's out there as well. It's kind of getting, things are starting to really get spread out quite a bit. So what is cybersecurity? Just, I wanted to start with that and get you to think about it a little bit differently than maybe what you're picking up in the media. So, when we think of cybersecurity, right now we're thinking about attacks, we're thinking about, malware and things like that. But the concept of cybersecurity really is about these 5 elements, right? What you're trying to do with all of this is protect the confidentiality and the integrity of your people and your data. You're trying to keep your systems up and running at all times. You're trying to make sure that you authenticate who people are and that you're authenticating the transactions that are actually occurring. So that's the statement about non-repudiation. It's saying you prove that you actually did something on a computer. And then authentication is about making sure that the people that are using your system are supposed to be there and are working on the right thing. So security within this environment is more than just technology. And I'm trying to encourage people to think about it at 4 basic levels, right? There's policies about protecting your assets, policies from a management standpoint in terms of how you're understanding your risk and prioritizing the risk based on probability that it will happen and the potential impact that it could have on your business if something bad happens. The procedures that are in place, to ensure the proper access, the proper data security, the proper availability, the technology itself, and that's, what we hear lots and lots about is tools and things about running on the systems, running on the servers, running on the networks. And then lastly, but really almost most importantly, is about human behavior. You have to think about how people are using your systems, things like email and their use of social media. The more information people freely share on these different platforms, the more an outside entity knows about your business and can negatively impact your business if they want to. So think about cybersecurity as more than just issues about technology. I'm not going to go into these. I'm not going to try to steal Josh's thunder here, but I want to document for you for kind of later use because we'll make this presentation available, the slide deck and the recording online so you can look at it, share it later, what have you. But I want you to think about what different elements you're going to need to address in order to increasing your security posture, right? So using more than just a password to get in. Two-factor authentication would be like using a card and a password, or a password and a fingerprint, or any number of ORs. Who gets access to the machine? Who gets access to what systems based on their logins and what they should actually be using? Your use of encrypting data and encrypting information, use of firewalls. Vulnerability management is all about how are you getting alerted to problems and how are you responding to those problems. Risk management is basically saying how are you protecting the most valuable assets in the business. What is the most important? You can't protect everything, so let's get focused on protecting the most important assets. And then finally, there's an area called built-in software assurance, which is saying basically where are you getting software from? Who is downloading software onto your corporate system? Where is this coming from? Is the software itself secure? And is that opening up any new problems or potential problems for your business as well? So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to my co-presenter, Josh, and I'm going to let him give you some insights into things that you can do now to make your security posture stronger.
Okay. Hi, this is Josh Marpet. Can you all hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Roy, you're going to turn over presenter to me, I believe?
Yes, I just did.
And while I'm presenting, I don't think I'll be able to see that meeting stream, but Scott and Jeff will be keeping an eye on it. So if you have any questions, please type them out or raise your hand, and they'll stop me, and we'll go ahead and do that.
Can you share your screen, Josh, real quick?
I can, if I can. Let me share. There we go. My screen. Okay. The entire screen is okay. You are sharing your screen. I'm terribly excited. Okay, so
yes, sir. There we go.
Do this correctly. Present. All right. You should be seeing the cybersecurity fundamental slide. Is that what you're seeing?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Just wanted to double check.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, Roy, thank you for introducing us. Today, we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of cybersecurity. Now, there's a couple things I want to start off with very, very quickly before I get yelled at. And that's number one, please ask questions. There's plenty of time to ask any question you want to ask. We don't have a problem with that. We love people that ask questions. I'm an adjunct college professor, so I expect questions, and if I don't get any, I will ask some of you. Please understand, this is just the way I do things. We're also planning this as one of a series of talks. So we've done this one as the fundamentals, and the first thing you do is you plan things, okay? So in this talk, we're going to be talking about how you plan out and understand what you're doing, okay? So with that being said, let's get into it. First, we should do some introductions. Scott, are you able to talk?
Hi. I am here. Thank you, Josh.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Lyons. I'm the CEO of Red Lion. I've been all over the industry as far as business. I worked for USCIS, to the contractor side, to the deep dark holes that nobody wants to talk about. So you can hear me, yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I've been a part of multiple conferences, most notably and recently at DEF CON, where I helped put it on. DEF CON is the world's largest hacker convention, and so you're looking at 30,000 people from all over the globe coming together to talk about new ideas and how those ideas really translate to what's being seen in industries across the board, from electrical to manufacturing to power to nuclear, all over the place. I do hold certifications in cybersecurity and information security. I'm not going to say just which ones, but if you ask me offline, I'll tell you. And my passions really are people and business. I think we're throwing it to Josh. We're going to throw it back to you. Josh?
Absolutely. And it sounds like I'm a bit tinny. If I am, hang on one second. I'm just going to dial in. Let's see if that works better. Testing?
There we go. Okay, better. Certainly the audio line is much better to talk on. Not a problem. All right, so let's start off. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Red Lion. I've been around the block more than once. I graduated from the Mach 37 Cyber Accelerator at Herndon, Virginia. So I've spoken to some GENEDGE people before, including Dave Erie, who works over at the CIT building. I'm a member of Mindshare and Michelin. They're both local Virginia CEO organizations. I've been around the block in terms of conferences. I was a former board member of Hackers for Charity, B-Side Las Vegas, and the Cloud Security Alliance Delaware Valley. I am still one of the primary organizers of Security B-Side Delaware, which is the conference up here in Wilmington. It's where I live, but I'm kind of Virginia all the time. I'm an ex-cop, I'm an ex-fireman, I'm an ex-horse dentist. That's not a joke, albeit it's kind of weird. I've done just about everything there is to do except astronaut, but I'm working on it. So, Let's take it to Jeff.
Sure, thanks, Josh. I lead the sales efforts here at Red Lion, and my responsibility is truly getting the word out. For those of you on the call, if you have any questions after the session is over, please contact me. Please reach out to me. My email's at the bottom. But I've been around the block just like my two cohorts here, all kinds of good stuff. And when I worked at JP Morgan, I'll never forget them talking about the fact that they spend $250 million a year on cyber protection, and yet we still got half. And that just sends a message to me saying that we need to be able to get the word out and protect ourselves. So where I'm reading the slide, I'm in sales, that's what I do, and feel free to give me a call or contact me either on Twitter or on email, and we'll get together. Josh, back to you.
Okay, so the idea here is that we want to talk about the ways that you need to move your business to do things in a better fashion. We want to talk about the fundamentals of IT and information security because they're linked in a lot of ways. We want to talk about risk management and monitoring, compliance, and why IT security and IT are cost centers and why they should actually be a revenue center. It's really just a mindset, and we'll explain that, I promise. So let's get started. So the fundamentals of information security, the basic principles, this is the essential part of it, all right? And effectively, they're very similar for IT on the left and IT security on the right. So for IT, your security questions are, have you updated your OS? Have you been patching? Do you have logs? You know, all these very basic questions that you've seen a dozen times, and the slides are going to be available to you. So if you want to take these and ask them of your IT organization, feel free. These are great questionnaires. Hey, how updated are we? Are we doing things are we patching on a regular basis? Are we monitoring and storing our logs? Have we changed all of our default passwords on all of our systems? Well, what about the IoT, the Internet of Things devices around here? Well, we don't have any. Really? How about the coffee maker? Ask me sometime, I'll tell you about the coffee maker that took down a power plant. That's not a joke. I wish it was. I really swear to God, I wish it was. Do we have a network diagram? That kind of thing. And on the right, on the IT security side, you know, do you have a firewall? Are you filtering mail and web for malware, for antivirus, for porn? Okay. Are you monitoring these things? Are you logging these events? And have you checked your open source information and your open source intelligence? In other words, who is watching on a regular basis to make sure that your company isn't being lambasted in social media and in the news? And how do you get away to get that information and then do something about it? Okay. And if you look at it, these are sort of similar questions. Do we have the systems? Do we have the process? So do we have the people? Do we have the behaviors? Just like Roy talked about earlier in the session, you know, people, process, and technologies. If your people are doing proper things, if your processes are documented and they're working correctly, and if you have the appropriate technologies for what you're doing and the risks that you're taking, you're going to be in good shape. Okay? Let's move on. And again, anytime you have a question, please type it out, raise your hand. You know, Scott, Jeff, stop me, and we'll take the question, okay?
So really, folks, what it comes down to is, are you doing the fundamentals, right? Are you doing the basics? As we at Red Lion are working with companies, we're noticing more and more that doing the basics gets you above everybody else, right? So really, the basics are who plans and architects your projects, right? Once they're up, who do you call for support? And most importantly, do you actually have security baked into your projects? Which means let's not just go about doing things to get them done and get them off the list. Let's make sure that they're done in a secure manner, right? So locking up ports on servers that are not needed, or enforcing very strict password policies to make sure that you're trying to mitigate the risk and the compromise of the system. Josh?
Absolutely. So then we've got risk management. And, excuse me. Risk management is very, very simply wondering what risks do we have. You've categorized them. You've actually looked at them and identified them. You've weighed need them? How bad are they? And you're looking at them to see what do we need to do to lessen and reduce our risks. And it's a scale. It's a trade-off. It's never I can reduce all risk. Anybody that says, and sorry, this is just a personal thing, anybody that says that I can make you 100% secure or 100% risk-free, they are lying to you, okay? And every business owner out there is giggling, going, yeah, he's right. Because it's just that simple. There's never a time that you're 100% risk-free or 100% secure. It doesn't happen, all right? We'll never say that to you. So let's talk about what that scale, what that equation is. All right, and I'll take the left-hand side, Scott, you'll take the right. But effectively, the equation is that your risks are a measurement of your vulnerabilities and threats against your assets. But that means a few things. You need to know what your assets are. How many, be honest with yourselves, you don't have to answer me, but how many of you know all the assets you have? Okay? And I'll bet that some of you thought, I think I do. Why is he asking such a silly question? You know, I know our assets. We've got cash in the bank. We've got machinery on the floor. We've got, you know, blueprints and intellectual property in the file server. Maybe I've got a backup of them over at a hot site or whatever, you know, in a bank deposit box, safe deposit box, whatever. Those are our assets. And that's absolutely correct. Those are assets. Are those the sum total of your assets? Okay? Because you start off with knowing what you need to protect. If you don't know what you need to protect, this whole equation goes out of whack. Then you need to figure out your threats and your vulnerabilities. Who is trying, what is trying to come and take your assets away, or steal copies of, or get, or whatever, you know what I mean? And how vulnerable are those assets to those takeover attempts, to those thefts, to the motions of taking your stuff from you? If you have, let's take this back to physical security. If you have a vault with a gold bar in it, and the vault is never locked, well, there's a vulnerability there. If somebody knows that the vault is unlocked, specifically at noon every Sunday, for an inventory of the gold, well, the fact that you have a standardized pattern is a vulnerability. It may never be exploited. It may never be stolen. It may never be, you know, there may never be armed robbers running in to take it. But it's still a vulnerability. You know your asset is the gold. You know what the threats are. People want to steal the gold. Okay, there are people that, you know, for $50,000, I'm making numbers up, worth of gold, they're willing to put some time and effort on the line, and the potentiality of jail time. And your vulnerability is that you never lock your vault. So that sum total, that sort of equation there, that's a measurement of your risk. Well, how can we lower our risk? I don't know, maybe lock the vault? Sometimes there are simple things you can do to lower your risk. Sometimes it's very difficult. But on the other hand, if I have nothing in the vault, let's just take the gold out of the equation. There's no real reason for them to break in. I'd rather have the vault wide open for people to see, hey, there's nothing here. Don't try. Just leave it alone. You know, you want to come in and take pictures. Ooh, pretty, that's cool. But just, you know, don't try stealing stuff. There's nothing here to steal. You have to measure what you do against what you have, against the vulnerabilities, against the threats. Sometimes there are things that aren't even worth money. Let's say you have intellectual property that a nation state decided they really liked. There was a small company that actually had that happen to them. There was a small company, and I won't name any names, but there was a small company that owned a web filter. They built this, they had it was theirs, all right? Well, somebody wanted it, and so they took it. China, a nation state, sent one of their elite hacking units to break into this guy's server, steal his code, and it's now a significant part of the Great Firewall of China. So even though it wasn't worth, to him, the amount of money that intellectual property is worth wasn't worth that amount of effort, to them it was. So sometimes you have to start thinking from the attacker's point of view, not necessarily your point of view. I hope that makes sense. Scott, do you want to talk about the other side?
Yeah, and looking at it, you raise a really good point. Looking at it from the attacker's perspective, well, what is the attacker trying to do? The attacker is trying to do three things. Get in, get the stuff, whatever the stuff is, and get out, right? So really, you're trying to understand the motive, the opportunity, and the access that an attacker would have, right? So looking at the vault from an attacker's perspective, what I'm going to look at is not only is there a passcode, is it left unlocked, does it open on certain times, but I'm also looking at what is the vault made of, right? Can I get in through the floor? Can I tunnel underneath of the vault, which allows me to get in anytime I want, which gives me stealth, right? So if you're not checking the vault on a daily basis, I can go in on Monday, and you wouldn't know until next Sunday, right? What I, as an attacker, want is to be able to get the most data with the least amount of groundhogging. And I know I'm using that term as a euphemism, but without sticking my head up and drawing attention to myself, right? So every single aspect has to be looked at to understand what your risk is from an attacker's perspective, right? Now, that's really interesting. You know, when we talk about assets, Josh, if you want to go to the next one. When we talk about assets, what are assets? Okay. Well, assets can be the trade secret, also the secret sauce. It can be your IP. It can be your accounting records, your bank account credentials, your Active Directory domain admin credentials, you know, something that controls your network on a management level, or anything that makes your company disappear. You know, assets can range in all different shapes and sizes and variations in scope, right? So realistically, what makes the business run and what can bring the greatest risk to the business if compromised should be labeled as an asset, right? But assets aren't the only issue that IT people need to be aware about. You know, in today's ever-changing landscape, threats are absolutely huge in shape and size. And Josh, I'm going to let you talk about that one if you want to go to the next.
So we've got lots of threats out there. I mean, you're familiar with the fact that there are cyber criminals, hacktivists. You've got people inside the organization that could do bad things. But there's all sorts of threats, ranging from human stupidity to the governments to competitors and nation-state actors. We just talked about the Chinese taking that guy's assets. Oh, sorry. There we go. But what about if the government decides that your intellectual property is something they want? Even the U.S. government. What if you make something that goes into a classified system and you didn't realize that your piece is classified? You tooled up to do it for 50 different clients, and the government says, no, you can only sell it to us now. Okay, that's a business threat, isn't it? What does it have to do with my intellectual property? Well, maybe if you'd planned out your intellectual property properly, we could actually build 3 different versions of it, one for the classified systems, one for the non-classified systems, and so on and so forth. When we get to compliance, part of compliance is ITAR and the munitions controls. And if you know them carefully, and if you've got a good compliance department, they'll stop you and say, hey, that's probably going to get classified. We should probably think about doing multiple versions of it so we can sell it to commercial clients as well. All right, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But the point is that there are so many threats out there, from the ones that you know about, the cyber criminals, the hacktivists, and so on. The fact that if your web admin, your web server admin screws up and misconfigures your website, you could be dropping passwords, intellectual property. We had a company that very recently, as a matter of fact, they had most of their stuff in AWS, Amazon Web Services, in the cloud, as it were. And they didn't realize that they had all of their bids for all of their projects in an exposed S3 bucket. What that means is that somebody found their S3 bucket and dropped all of their bids on the internet. So their competitors were very happy. The competitors were ecstatic. They were not so happy. That was a problem. So there's all kinds of threats out there, and you've got to think about all of them when you plan, when you think about your threats versus your assets, your risks, your vulnerabilities we talked about.
So, right, and so when you're talking about threats, right, threats translate into vulnerabilities, because threats, the move from threats to vulnerabilities is how you adequately define your risk, right? So vulnerabilities could be a server misconfig, a laptop left unencrypted. I mean, how many times, Josh? How many times have you heard of the FBI leaving laptops out and getting lost?
It's not just the FBI. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Oh, dear God.
You know, allowing bad admin credentials on a web page, you know, using a VPN with a bad encryption cipher, or having a VPN service that sells your data. You know, there's a lot of different. Go ahead.
Can I throw one in there?
Yeah.
There was a survey done of VPN clients for Android. So if you're on your phone, you want to use the hotel Wi-Fi, but you're a little scared that somebody's, you know, doing bad things to the hotel Wi-Fi. So you download a VPN app and use that. Now your stuff is secure and safe, right? I mean, everybody has done that to a certain extent. Everybody's gone, hey, is this hotel Wi-Fi safe? Or did somebody just set up a Hilton Honors, you know, access point to steal my stuff? Well, I'm going to use the VPN. I'll VPN back into my company. I'll VPN back into the internet and use it from there. There was a survey done and a technical study done of 283 different Android VPN apps. They found that about 12% of them don't even encrypt the data. All they are is a name on an app, and that's all it does. Literally, they do nothing else. They just take your money, and your stuff is still unencrypted and available for anybody to steal. Yay! Terrifying. Scott, sorry.
Well, no, and you're absolutely correct. You know, whenever there's two ways that you have to look at the whole information security spectrum. You have to look at it from inside of your business and what risks can be wrought with inside your business, and externally. So how do you look as a company externally, right? And so a server misconfig could be an internal vulnerability, whereas a VPN, choosing the wrong VPN for your company, it's an external vulnerability, you know? But realistically, what it all comes down to is two words: risk management, right? And in risk management, there's a couple of different ways to define what your risk is. Josh, I'm going to let you talk about this one.
So we separated this out back again into IT and IT security, and these teams should work together. We're a big believer that your compliance team, your security team, your IT team, your people, your groups, they should all work together. If they don't, you're breaking up your silo. Your silos are getting bigger and taller and nastier, and that's not appropriate. Then you may not have an IT security person. You may not have an IT security team. You may not have a compliance team. Okay, that's fine. But these ideas should work together. So let's talk about them for a second. In IT, does your IT person, people, team, group, whatever, do they know all the machines you have? Do they know all the servers you have spread out across Amazon, physical servers, the ones on the factory floor, whatever? Do they know all the pieces, devices, all the intellectual property that's out there as well? Where is the intellectual property? Who has the inventory of your informational assets? Who has access to them? So data owner. We've got a trade secret over here. Who owns it? But what do you mean? Well, if something happens and there's a break-in, if there's a breach, who do I need to notify? Well, I mean, we all know who. Really? Do you have a formalized chart? Because I'll tell you right now, I bet you if you've got more than 20 people, 3 of them at least think that somebody else owns X, Y, or Z. I guarantee it. All right? And speaking of breaches, if something happens, do you have a plan? It can be as simple as shut it down. That's fine. But do you have one? Okay? We've worked with a hedge fund. Their incident response plan is sell everything. Not a joke. That's their incident response plan. If they get breached, they sell all their holdings, they shut down. That's their plan. I said, you know, that's pretty straightforward and simple. They're like, we didn't want to be crazy. We wanted to, you know, we can always sell it, have cash in the bank, and go rebuy and start from scratch later. All right, that's legit. You know? And when you get to, but you need to have a plan. And when you get to IT security, what systems are our protective systems, our firewalls, our intrusion detection systems, our antivirus, anti-malware, et cetera? Do we have a list of them? Who's in charge of them? When something happens, who takes care of them? Again, it's a response. What are our threats? Who is looking to hurt us? That's profiling the threats. All right? Have we found all of our informational assets? Let me explain. If you have a company with 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, there's somebody building something because their boss told them to, because they thought it was a great idea, whatever. All right? If that's the case, where it is it in a proper place for that informational asset? If not, you've got a problem. Look, these are very, very simple things. Have you done a penetration test or a vulnerability scan? If not, why not? Let's talk about that. We'll get to that a little more in compliance. But these are very, very straightforward things that can be done just simply by walking around and interviewing and asking people. Okay? And if you ask, hey, IT guy, do you know everything that we have, all our machines, all our devices, all our stuff? If they go, yes, fantastic. Where's the list? Well, I know about them all. Great. If you get hit by a bus, what now? Okay? You gotta ask these questions. And ask always the concrete truck question. You get hit by a concrete truck, who has that list?
Right, and that makes a really good point. When you're trying to define risk to an organization, you really want to deal with three questions, right? What do you own that is valuable? Who wants it? And are you appropriately protecting it? Okay, are you doing everything that you can as an owner or a director or a manager to mitigate and minimize the impact of risk? Okay? And really from there, once you understand what your risk is, you need to know how to watch it, how to look for it, and how to monitor it. Josh?
So monitoring is the next piece of this. If you're not watching over stuff, you don't know if it's as efficient as it can be, you don't know when it breaks, and you don't know when things go wrong. Now, we all know about monitoring. We watch over our factory floor, we watch over our workshop, we watch over our stuff. But there's actual formal ways of monitoring things. You can monitor your workflow, your technologies. You can monitor everything that happens. You can monitor your systems with logs and your applications, your devices, your IoT. You've got a Raspberry Pi running your thermostat. You've got a Next thermostat. You can monitor that. It actually sends out logs, and you can collect them. But why? Well, why did our heating bill rise $500 last month? Well, somebody changed the thermostat and raised the temperature by 20 degrees or lowered the temperature by 20 degrees. That $500 a month, that's an expense. And unexpected expenses are what we know as they suck. Okay? So we want to make sure they don't happen as much as possible. And that may be an extreme example with a thermostat, but you get the idea. You got to monitor things so that you can keep track of what's going on, so you can make sure you're efficient, you're appropriate, your processes are working as designed, you're taking proper steps, and you're collecting evidence for compliance, for audit, for your power company. When they go, look, your power needs went up 300% last month. You're like, I can show you a thermostat. That's our primary power use, and we didn't change. So something's wrong with your system or your monitoring. And then they can come and find out that the box is bad. And that happened to a business I was working with. I wasn't involved with that piece of it, but they had actually monitored their thermostat, and they had a furnace, and they monitored their furnace. It was not a furnace with a building; it was a glass furnace actually, and they showed that they were using the same amount of BTUs as they were every month. It turns out that the meter had gone bad, and they wanted them to pay an extra $3,000 every month for 6 months, and they're like, try again. That can hurt a business, so they had evidence to prove it. That helped a lot. So, Scott.
So when dealing with monitoring, the questions that you want to ask are, how many applications do your workers use? How many people have access to assets? Are you logging, and who checks the logs on what frequency, right? Now, with these question sets that we've been throwing at you, we've actually been building up towards a really big topic, especially for manufacturers, right? Which is compliance. Okay? And compliance is not just a checkbox. Okay? Compliance is producing quality work with acceptable process and methodologies. Right? And compliance can really help, not only from a marketing standpoint, to say, hey, we follow HIPAA or PCI or GDPR, so that way we can do business in a certain region, but it also sets forth that trying to gear itself for an ever-changing market through meeting regulatory and compliance needs. Josh?
So look, I don't know if any of you deal with health information. I don't know if any of you deal with credit cards, how many of you are government contractors, et cetera, but there's a few that are coming up really fast. GDPR, which is on our list, is the European Data Privacy Directive, or the new version of it. If any of you have data from European citizens or sell to European citizens or have data sharing with European companies, guess what? They're going to be required to be compliant with GDPR by May of 2018. It's unpleasant. It's very doable, but it's unpleasant. If any of you are government contractors, by December 31st, you're required to be compliant with NIST 800-171, and so on and so forth. The best type of
Josh, let me ask you something here. I hate to break into your thought, your train of thought here, but what happens if somebody is not compliant with 171 by December?
Well, they're probably going to give you a little bit of an extension. Don't get me wrong, but not very much. I have heard rumors, and these are rumors, please don't take these as gospel, that within 1 quarter, 3 months after December, so that would be January, February, March, after March 2018, they will be cutting contracts. In other words, you'll lose your contract. Effectively, the idea is you don't know if you're ready or not. You don't know you're properly doing this to work with your customers.
Hey, Josh. Hey, Josh, this is Roy. I'm going to jump in. I'm getting some comments about the sound, and I was wondering if you could swap back over onto the computer as opposed to being on the phone. I think it'll come in clearer. I can't hear you on the computer yet.
Okay, hang on a second.
Yeah, there you go.
Bear with me 1 second, guys.
Yeah.
Let's plug this back in. Sorry, I muted everything. I just have to unmute. That should work. Okay. So,
okay,
testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, now we're saying you can hear it better.
Okay, solid. So, what we're doing is we're talking about cost versus revenue center. Is your security and compliance departments a cost center or a revenue center? It's really simple. And everybody goes, well, it's a cost center. I pay for the people to be IT. I pay for the people to be IT security. I pay for compliance. What is this idiot talking about revenue? Let's be honest here. And the real answer is that it's a revenue center if you treat it that way. If you have a NIST 800-171 compliance letter stating that you are compliant with the DPARs, with NIST 800-171, with GDPR, with whatever is appropriate for your company, your sales friction goes down. Your sales cycle shortens. It doesn't lengthen. your bottlenecks in sales normally disappear. In all seriousness, I'm not going to read the slide, but I mean, or any more than I already did. It becomes a revenue center. Your security feeds into your compliance, your IT feeds into your compliance, and your compliance help your salespeople get more business. So why? I mean, why do people treat it as a cost center? Because in direct line item budget matters, yeah, it's a cost center. But if you take your unpaid pre-sales, your opportunities that were lost, all those different things, and wrap them up, your return on investment is significant. Does that make sense to everybody? Well, it's streamlining your sales. It's making your business process-based and process-driven, which means that you can monitor and figure out and metric your business much easier. I know that we are going to make X number of dollars this month, quarter, year, whatever, because I can see the process. They are documented, they are understandable, they are standardized. I can see that we are doing X amount of these processes. I know that each of those makes us Y amounts of dollars, and at the end of the year, I'll have that. But in terms of sales, it shortens your sales cycle, reduces your sales friction, and just makes it a huge difference for your salespeople, because every time you get a big client, like a big client, you get a security or compliance or both questionnaire. If you can simply hand them back, thunk, here's our stuff. Guess what? You're done. Instead of wasting a month of your IT security people's time, it's pre-done. So, I'm sorry, did that make sense what I answered? Hello?
I think we lost him. Ron.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, your biggest sales friction bottleneck, you know, I don't. You know what your sales friction bottlenecks are. Imagine if that was gone. Imagine if your sales cycle was shortened by that amount of time and effort. That I have to imagine is attractive. That I have to imagine is something worthwhile. That's revenue. And that's what I mean by, is it a cost center or revenue center? So, to that end, I want to know if anybody has any questions.
Josh, thanks. I don't see anything right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swap back over to being the presenter.
Hang on 1 second, Roy.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I'm going to...
Jeff's got something for everybody here.
Okay.
Jeff. Roy, back to you. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Josh. So, in conclusion, let me also tell you online that we're making, GENEDGE has put together a self-assessment that you can download at no charge. We put this together so you can take a look at some of the key elements that need to be secured. It's basically just it's a checklist of things that some of them are procedural in nature. Some of the questions will be policy oriented, and then some of the questions and the items in there are going to be technical. So you would have to get in touch with your IT folks and have them look some of this up. I can also tell you that GENEDGE has actually been going through this ourselves because of the DFARS regulation and some of the work that we do and some of our commitments. And even as a small organization, we've got about 30, 35 people around the state. There were a lot of issues that came up in terms of how different machines were being monitored by our IT manager because we're all out in the field remote, where a lot of hardware was, even though we certainly had inventory of the hardware, there were a lot of technical management issues around that hardware. And then we also work in an environment where we use an outside source to host our server as well, and that opened up a lot of different questions as well. So this assessment is put together to help you think about some of those longer-term issues. So in conclusion, what we're going to end up with today is just to say that the state of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the state government for Virginia is very focused on this cybersecurity issue and trying to elevate it across all different sizes of organizations, because we do so much work in the Commonwealth with Department of Defense and with other federal agencies. The smaller companies out there need to be, you're in the supply chain, and whether you're regulated by one of these specifications or not, you're going to be have to utilize and meet the specifications of something at some point in time, whether it's financial business, whether it's banking business, whether it's retail, no matter what it is. There's governance issues about how electronic transactions are going up and down the wire and what you're doing to protect the data for both you and your suppliers as well. So what we're doing here out of the state is to say GENEDGE can help a company structure their risk management point of view on this. We are introducing companies to a number of different cybersecurity technical experts for vulnerability assessments, information security planning, and that kind of thing. And the closing statement that I'll make here to you is that this is not something that companies will be able to ignore into the future. I know a lot of companies out there are still using XP machines and things like that. The world is getting very different, and it's not just this isn't meant to be a scare tactic. It's saying the world is very different, and with the Department of Defense and the state integrated together here in Virginia, we want to help companies increase their posture and increase the performance of these organizations. So with that brings our webinar to a conclusion. I'm going to make this available online, all the slides and the audio as well. So we appreciate your attendance. Thank you very much, and hope you have a good rest of the week. Thanks. Goodbye.